A very good evening. Thank you for joining us here on India Tonight. I'm Nivedna Prabhu, and with me is my colleague Sumita Keir. In fact, as the next 1 hour progresses, we're going to put all the top developments into perspective. But let's begin with our top focus. The India and the UK have signed the terms of reference to reposition the Joint Economic and Trade Committee during the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and UK Prime Minister Starmer in Mumbai today. In fact, let's tell you, the terms of reference seek to push forward the India-UK Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement that was signed earlier this year in July. Now, the opportunities waiting to be seized under the India-UK Free Trade Agreement are unparalleled. British Prime Minister Starmer said yesterday as he kick-started his first visit to India after assuming the charge of the top office. Sumita.
Absolutely. In fact, a path-breaking India-UK CETA will create new job opportunities for youth, expand trade and benefit for both the country's industries as well as consumers. In fact, that's essentially what the Prime Minister said on the UK-India Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, or FTA, that was signed earlier this year in July 2025. In fact, Prime Minister Modi, while addressing the Global Fintech Fest in 2025 in Mumbai, said that India's digital ecosystem is setting global standards for innovation and inclusion. Prime Minister Modi also hailed the Global Fintech Fest and said that it has become a platform for global technology. But let's first listen into what the Prime Minister had to say, and then we'll be welcoming a stellar panel of guests to discuss India-UK ties and where they stand as of now and the way forward as far as ties between the two countries are concerned. Let's listen in to what the Prime Minister had to say.
भारत और यूके के बीच टेक्नोलॉजी पार्टनरशिप में अपार संभावनाएं हैं। हम यूके की इंडस्ट्रियल एक्सपर्टाइज आर&डी को भारत के टैलेंट और स्केल के साथ जोड़ने पर काम कर रहे हैं। दोनों देशों की युवा पीढ़ी को इनोवेशन इस ब्रिज से जोड़ने के लिए हमने कनेक्टिविटी और इनोवेशन सेंटर, ज्वाइंट एआई रिसर्च सेंटर जैसे कई कदम उठाए हैं। हमने क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स पर सहयोग के लिए एक इंडस्ट्री गिल्ड और सप्लाई चेन ऑब्जर्वेटरी की स्थापना का निर्णय लिया है। रक्षा और सुरक्षा से लेकर एजुकेशन और इनोवेशन तक भारत और यूके के रिश्तों में नए आयाम घड़े जा रहे हैं। आज प्रधानमंत्री स्टारमर के साथ शिक्षा क्षेत्र का अब तक का सबसे बड़ा और प्रभावशाली प्रतिनिधिमंडल आया है। यह बहुत खुशी की बात है कि अब यूके की 9 यूनिवर्सिटीज भारत में कैंपस खोलने जा रही हैं।
All right, we heard what the Prime Minister had to say, and like Sumita was also telling our viewers just before this that we have a stellar panel of guests joining us this evening. So let us take that opportunity to be introducing them. Joining us tonight is Ashok Sajjanar, former ambassador. We also have with us Meeta Sengupta, educational expert, as well as Raymond Vickery, former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce, Trade Development. Good evening, all of you. Thank you very much for taking the time out. Ambassador Sajjanar, let me come to you first. We've looked at the kind of developments that have happened, but more importantly, let's begin with what we're looking at essentially for both the nations now, and how are you reading into this?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I think this is as it has been described, it's a historic achievement. It's a game changer. It's, many adjectives have been used and superlatives have been used. I think all of them are really merited. They are merited particularly not only in the context of bilateral ties, the way they are shaping up, the way they are going, but also I think in the context of the geopolitical circumstances, the changes, the uncertainty that is happening. And in this context, the sort of stability that it provides not only to India-UK bilateral trade, but I think security as far as the world is concerned. So here, looking at CETA per se, meaning this is the most ambitious trade agreement, free trade agreement that India has entered into with any country, and also the most ambitious that the United Kingdom has entered with any country. It is very important for the United Kingdom because it is the first major FTA that it is signing after Brexit. 2016 referendum, 2020 it went out, and after 2022, 3 years, 20 rounds of negotiations, and we've been able to come here. 99% of Indian goods will get into the UK market free of duty. 90% of goods from the United Kingdom will come to India free of duty. And this is the most ambitious, as I said, 26 chapters, not only trade in goods, services, IPRs, government procurement, which is a huge area where we have really not opened up. And I have negotiated for India in not only in the WTO, not only in GATT, but also with the EU, with Thailand, with ASEAN, etc. And I can tell you that, the elements that we have introduced in this, environment, labor, and all the other things, they are quite unprecedented. We have not done with any other country. And so I think the
Right.
impact, the last point that
Right.
I would make here is today our bilateral trade is $56 billion between the two countries. And the
Right, sir.
expectation is that it will go up to 112 billion. It will be doubled by 2030.
Right, sir. Thank you very much for your initial comments. Let me take some of those comments to Mr. Vikri. Mr. Vikri, would you agree that Starmer's political futures are essentially pegged to this deal because of what Sir was also mentioning, Mr. Sajjanar was also mentioning that there is immense uncertainty around the world. And of course, the UK is facing the double whammy of not just slowing down, but this uncertainty that is being talked about with respect to Donald Trump's policies.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I think that the developments in regard to this CETA, this free trade agreement, are a breath of fresh air in the international trade system, particularly against the background of what Donald Trump has done in regard to India and other nations. President Trump's approach has been my way or the highway.
To have run into a technical issue in terms of your right there, Mr. Vikri. We'll try getting you back as far as your statement was also concerned. But also on the show is Meeta. Meeta, let me come to you. We're given to understand that 9 UK universities will be opening their campuses in India, and that's in a sense a historic first. But how transformative could this be in terms of the education sector as well? How are you looking at it from your vantage point?
I think this is a very, very welcome development. And this is something that works very well both for India and the UK, because the UK university sector has been struggling for a while with its own economic imperatives, its own pressures. The Indian sector has been struggling for a while in ways where we wanted people to come and study in India. That's been difficult. We have wanted, in India, we have wanted to climb up the Times Higher ranking. In India, we have wanted our classroom pedagogies to become more application-oriented, the way it is in the UK, much more question-answer based, much more ownership of the world. We have that global ambition in India. We have engineering students doing startups and innovation. This fusion, this opportunity for educationists to come together and learn from each other, systems and governance coming from the UK, the energy coming in from India, I think has great potential, both for the UK and for India. The UK is already counting it as a win. There's the press there is claiming that it's going to earn them $50 million. I think it's a huge win for India, both institutionally, we're going to see a boost in our GDP because of the roll-on consequences, but also for individual students who now do not have to go abroad to study abroad. This, in a way, is the true internationalization of Indian universities. We have campuses abroad, other campuses are coming in. This has been a journey long in the making, but this is definitely a milestone moment for higher education in India. So much more cooperation, so much more potential right now.
Absolutely, Ms. Sengupta, and it remains to be seen whether this template will be followed by the other countries with which we are currently negotiating bilateral trade agreements or FTAs. Let me come to you on that note, Mr. Sajjanar. Now, given today's statements and the establishment of a mechanism for the operationalization of the FTA, what does it really mean for India, given the fact that Indian economy is not really dependent on exports? We're more dependent on our domestic demand. And secondly, I want to understand from you, there is no investment commitments that are linked to it, as is the case with the EFTA countries, the pact with EFTA countries that India currently has. So are there any concrete gains in terms of what India gets from this agreement?
No, absolutely. I think excellent questions, Sumita. And, let me put it this way, that although India is a very, consumption-driven, domestic demand-driven economy, and much of its, growth comes from domestic consumption. But I think we also need to realize that no country in the world, small, big, medium size, has been able to grow without focusing on exports, without focusing on foreign trade. So, you take smaller markets, you take small countries, take Japan, take Korea, take China. Each and every one of them has grown by focusing on exports. And India, unfortunately, when we started the opening up in the early 1990s, that was the time when the world was, putting the barriers around their borders and tariff barriers, etc. But I think right now what we have here, and particularly, as far as Indian exports to the United Kingdom are concerned, we already have a positive trade balance. We have a surplus trade balance with the United Kingdom. So I think if, in when we put $5 trillion in terms of our GDP, in that we had $1 trillion in terms of the exports that we are able to earn. So I think exports are a very important element, a very significant element as far as our economy is concerned. And particularly here, what we'll be focusing on, Sumita, is in terms of the more labor intensive products, whether it is textiles, whether it is garments, whether it is leather products, whether it is gems and jewelry. And I think you would remember that these are also the items that are going to be affected the most when the United States has imposed its unreasonable and illegal tariffs on India
Right,
of
sir.
50%. It is basically those items that are going to be
Right.
impacted, and I think those items will be able to get a good market in the United Kingdom. And if you're talking about, if there is
Right, sir.
greater energy, I think the body language of the two prime ministers would have made it very evident that both of them are very enthusiastic about taking it forward and implementing it.
Right. So I just have one follow-up question to this, and I have two arguments, to your point essentially about why FTAs are good. And of course, we need to have an export-driven strategy as well. Number one, this FTA hasn't really been operationalized. So we are yet to see the impact of the kind of investments that are going to come in, the kind of jobs that will be created out of this FTA. And secondly, seeing how the past FTAs have worked, particularly with respect to the ASEAN FTA, that hasn't really worked for us, right? I mean, there is still some bitterness with ASEAN countries that India currently has. India is not exactly very happy. The industry is not very happy with the way that ASEAN FTA or the talks have really unraveled.
No, you are absolutely right. The ASEAN countries, or even for that matter with Japan, Korea, etc., they have not worked. And, I am to an extent guilty of having negotiated the India ASEAN FTA to some extent, India Thailand FTA to some extent. But I think those are, we are competing for the same markets as far as these countries are concerned. And that is why we have asked that, ASEAN free trade agreement, we have a renegotiation of that. And that is an exercise that is going on, albeit very slowly, and we really need to take it forward. And I think right now what we are doing here is in terms of, having an FTA with an economy, if it is UK, if it is EU, if it is USA, then these are complementary economies. They are not competing with each other. And so in that sense, I think there will be benefit to both sides. One question I didn't answer of yours in the earlier one that we are getting $100 billion of investment from EFTA. That is because these are four countries, very small economies. So in that sense, the benefit, in terms of the increase in exports that India can expect getting into those markets would be rather limited as compared to, the advantage that they would be able to get. But here, as far as India and UK, India is the fourth largest economy, UK is the sixth largest economy. So big economies, both of them, and both of them can reap benefits from each other. And the last point is, as I said, India has a positive balance of trade both in goods and services, but it is not a very pronounced, balance of trade, surplus of trade that we have with the United Kingdom. So I think both the countries can really expect to grow in a balanced manner. Sumita.
All right, so balance is, one aspect of it. And, while you, of course, Ambassador Sajanar gave us all those viewpoints, I want to take that across to Mr. Vikri. Mr. Vikri, from a global trade perspective, right, with the US, the UK, and India, all, of course, pursuing digital and clean energy transitions, do you see this also as a part of a broader democratic economic supply chain alliance as well, given all that we've seen with this particular trade deal?
I do see it that way. It seems to me that economic engagement is a key part to building peace and prosperity, not only between UK and India, but throughout the world. I think that one of the key parts here is the trade in services. Most of these agreements will concentrate just on goods, but this has a robust provision for trade and services, for regularizing visas, for temporary immigration, and that is extremely important. It seems to me that this has taken a long time with the UK. It started in 2022, but it shows the right way to bring about a trade agreement which will increase trade and also investment. Trade and investment go together. There are not specific provisions here, as in EFTA, for the kinds of investment. But when you have an increase in trade, you're going to have an increase in investment and vice versa. So these things work together, and they're all part of a very, very important component in regarding to building peace and prosperity. There is not a bright dividing line between security and economic matters. If you do not have a robust economic engagement, you're not going to be able to go forward on security matters and vice versa. So I think this is a very positive development and should show President Trump and others in his administration the right way to be able to approach international economic engagement, as opposed to imposing tariffs and saying you're going to do it exactly as I say.
Mr. Vikri, let me come to you, Mr. Sajanar, because we have time just for one final question. And I want to, bring up this issue of Khalistani separatists. That's been a thorn in the relationship between India and the United Kingdom, along with the extradition of economic offenders. This, of course, was not part of the statements that were issued from the Indian government. But is that something which would have been discussed off record? And would the UK be essentially looking at addressing these concerns, even as it aims of becoming an important partner in India's growth trajectory?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think the focus of this visit has been business, has been economics, has been trade, has been investment. And that is why you see that all the 2 days have been spent in Mumbai, that is the commercial capital of India. Now, those items,
Right.
Khalistan, economic offenders, would definitely have come up for discussion. If the two leaders have discussed Gaza, they've discussed Ukraine, they've discussed all the other issues, regional and global issues, definitely they would have discussed this. And I would dare say that, although there are problems, but we have found the United Kingdom in recent times to be more sympathetic and to be more forthcoming as far as meeting the concerns and showing sensitivity to India's concerns are, as far as that is related to. So I'm sure those would have been there. Some of these cases, Sumita, they take place through the courts. And the courts have their own way of functioning, especially as far as the economic offenders are concerned. We've seen that there have been sort of, positive movements, positive decisions from the courts, but it does take a little long time. Like, you could even mention about the ratification procedures in the United Kingdom for this. What Mr. Starmer said, I'd like to get this implemented the fastest that it is humanly possible. But there are certain legal processes and parliamentary procedures that have to be entered into. And as far as the Khalistan issue is concerned, again, those are British citizens, those who are creating this problem and creating.
Right. But I'm afraid we're running out of time, so I'd have to
Sure.
interject you there. Right, Ambassador.
Sure.
I apologize. I'd have to interject you there because you're running short of time. But on that note, Mr. Vikri, Amita, as well as Ambassador Sajana, thank you very much for joining us here this evening. For the moment, we leave the conversation at that. But we, of course,